and show you in action what happens. So we'll do a world rotation and we'll move it up in the air and we'll align it to this object and we'll say X, Y, Z and we'll do the pivot points. And you can see they're now aligned. The pivot points are actually on exactly the same point, but you can see that the teapot is rotated whereas the cube isn't. So that the rotation axes of the transforms of the teapot are offset compared to the cube. So again, you can use the align tool to snap the axes together. So we'll do X, Y and Z, and now the teapot is aligned completely with the cube. As you can see, you've got options here for scale. So the same thing, if the teapot is at 100% scale in each of its axes, you can use that snap there to actually get the teapot to be the same scale in all the different axes as the cube. So a very useful tool which is used pretty often when you're working in Max. To the right of, actually let's hold down the button here. This is a common thing that you'll actually see in Max. If you look at these icons, you can see they've got little tabs here. And you saw earlier that I went here to choose the different options. This is used to denote that there's more than one option underneath that icon. And you can see, yeah, the same thing for the marquee types. So in this case, you can see you've got the align tool, you've got the normal array, normal align, which will actually get the teapot and as far as I remember will align it with the surface, but the normal on the surface, in other words perpendicular to the surface. Or you've got lighting align. This will actually align a selected light to a facet on the surface and will basically guarantee that you get a highlight at that point, which is quite useful, but more for sort of classical lighting techniques rather than current techniques. Then we have align camera. To the right of the align tools we have the layer manager, and if we open that up you can see that we've got a default layer which everything in the scene is put under. So you can see that if we open it up, we've got the box and the teapot, and they're both in their own little they're both under the default layer. But let's say we wanted to have a bunch of teapots, so we'll move this teapot down here and I'll move it over here a little bit and copy it, and again, okay, and I'll do the same thing for the cube, and again, and let's say we want to have two groups in the scene, two layers. One is called teapots and one is called cubes. So we select all the teapots and we go here and we say create a new layer, and we've created a new layer and I'm going to rename that and call that teapots. Okay, great, we've created our little teapot layer. I'm going to do the same thing for the cubes. There we are, we create another layer, rename that cubes. Okay, great, we've got two layers, and if we open those up we can see we've got the cubes in there, and if we open up this one we can see we've got the teapots in here. And what we can actually do is we can hide all the elements in one of the layers at once. You can see you've got buttons here for hiding and freezing. So let's say we want to hide all the teapots. We click on this icon and we've hidden all the teapots. You can see the little icon turns up a little mask here to show that the teapots are hidden. Let's unhide the teapots. Let's say we want to freeze them. So I click on the freeze button and you can see they're now all frozen. And what freezing does basically is makes an object in Max still be visible in the viewport, but you can't actually select it. No matter what you do, you can't select that object. And that's very useful when you're doing layout, or let's say for instance animating characters, and you don't want to select the table or the chair. You may just want to select the character. So what you can do in that circumstance is you can actually put the character in its own layer, put the table in its own layer, let's say the set, the walls, the chair, the set, everything in its own layer, and then you can just freeze the entire layer just by pressing on the freeze button there. Same thing for the cube, same thing, hide the cubes, so now they're hidden and frozen. So yeah, you can see we've got some pretty cool tools there. So let's just close that down. To the right of that we have the curve editor, which I'll briefly open just to give you a quick view of it. This is used for animating, and we'll come to that later, so we'll close that down for now. Just basically there's an icon there so you can access that. To the right of that you have the schematic view. We'll just open that briefly, and this allows you to see the relationships of objects in the scene. So as an example, what we'll do is we'll create a little bit more interesting relationship. I talked about the link tool earlier. Select this teapot, we'll link it to this teapot. We'll select this teapot, we'll link it to that teapot. Now you have a parent teapot. There we go. We've created a hierarchy, which is something I described earlier. And you can see that this is a child of this teapot, this is a child of this teapot. If I move the parent of all of them, they all move. If I move this one, only its child moves. If I move this one, none of the others move. So the child is lowest down the chain, and this is a common feature in other packages, and as I said, the link tool allows you to do that. We'll do the same thing for the boxes. We'll link the boxes together. Link there, and link there. And you can see as I'm doing this, the schematic view is updating. And what it's showing is that this box here is the parent of these boxes, and you can see that this teapot here is the parent of these teapots, and you can use various tools in here to actually modify your scene and the relationships with them. So we'll just close that down and go on to the next section. To the right of the schematic view, we have the material editor, which is something that we'll come to later. Basically, this is the editor that you'll use to edit all the materials in your scene, so it's something that you'll probably come to a lot, obviously, especially when you're texturing or rendering and lighting. So yes, a very important tool there. To the right of the material editor, we have the render scene, the render dialog, and as of Max 6, this was broken up into various tabs, which basically allow you to set up how you're going to render, to decide what renderer you're going to use. For instance, here you could choose to use a different renderer, let's say Mental Ray, which comes with Max 6 onwards. There we go, we could choose to use Mental Ray as the renderer. And when you update the renderer, these tabs actually update to offer the specific functionality of the renderer that you have currently selected. So let's put that back to the default Scanline Max renderer. There we go, and I'll show you a little bit more of that later. To the right of the render dialog, we have the render type, and this allows you to basically limit exactly what you're going to render in your viewport. For instance, you can just render the selected object, so let's try that and do a render, and you can see it's just rendered that teapot. Let's select the 3 teapots, and you can see it's rendered all 3 of the teapots. We'll select everything, and it's done everything. Let's say we're only interested in a part of the image, so I'll do another render again. I'll blank it, there we go, and we'll select it up to do a region. So do a render, Max asks for the region. In this case I just want to render this part of the image here, okay that, and then Max only renders that part of the viewport. So that's very useful for when you're doing quite a heavy render and you just want to concentrate on a specific area, an area of particular interest that you're working on at the moment, or you're texturing, or you're very interested in the lighting in that particular area. So region's very useful for that. And you've got various other options here, crop and blow up. Blow up, for instance, will actually render a region, but actually it's like zooming in with a telescope almost. It'll just render that region but blow it up to actually fill the full view of the render. So some very useful options there. And as you saw to the right of the render types, we've also got the quick render button. So there we go, that's the main toolbar, and as you can see it's pretty packed. There's quite a lot of functionality there, so it'll probably take a while to get used to, but like I said, it's a pretty pivotal area of Max, so something that you'll obviously have to spend quite a bit of time getting used to there.